buildings. At the entrance to the residential quarters of the chief priest is a guard stone. S.M. Burroughs, in his archaeological report in the late 19th century, states, "The door guardian stones, standing over 5 feet high, is unrivaled in excellence of preservation and delicacy of finish." This is the best example of a moonstone, a creation unique to Sri Lankan sculpture. It can be seen at the foot of the steps leading to the Panchavasa or the monks' quarters. This is a kind of stupa rare in Sri Lanka, with steps leading to the upper stories, and reflects strong and mystic Mahayanic influences. There is evidence supported by finds that the entire stupa, stone slabs and statues have all been painted with locally produced lime-based paint. One such paint-making center with engraved depressions for mixing has been discovered and restored at Abhayagiri. The Sannipata Sala, or assembly hall for monks facing the Abhayagiri Dagava, is the largest of its kind in Anuradhapura and may have accommodated a congregation of over 5,000. In the Mahamega Gardens, there are the remains of a sanatorium for aging bhikkhus. Dharani Griha, as these terraced edifices are known, may have been chambers where rituals and occult practices were performed and reflect the Mahayanic tradition represented by the Abhayagiri chapter. Abhisheka Mandapa, the ceremonial anointing hall. There is something very weird about these remnants of ancient luxury hidden in the lonely forest, observed Henry W. Cave, writing in 1896. There are so many, he continued, and they vary so much in architectural treatment that they must have added greatly to the aspect of the city. We cannot help reflecting too that the famous baths of the Roman emperors were constructed contemporaneously with these, and that while those of Caracalla and Diocletian, being built of brick, have crumbled now beyond repair, the picturesque and elegant baths of Duttagamini and their beautiful terraces and stairways of granite can with little trouble be restored to their pristine condition. Cave was unaware that these elegant baths were built almost exclusively for the use of Buddhist monks in a city wholly dedicated to a faith whose goal is nirvana. There are other stupas in the Abhayagiri Vihara complex. One such is the Lanka stupa, which originally had a conical roof covering. The community of monks had enormously increased with the popularity of the new religion, and Duttagamini made their welfare his chiefest care, erecting the Loha Pasada, known as the Brazen Palace, for their accommodation. In the words of the great chronicle Mahavamsa, in this palace there were 1,000 dormitories, having windows with ornaments which are bright as eyes. Ruan Valley Saya, the gold dust Dagaba with its purity of line and contours of classical spareness, symbolizes the spirit of Anuradhapura, one of the most beautiful chapters in the history of mankind's quest for peace and harmony on earth. To the southeast of Anuradhapura is this hill rising from a range bursting out of the plain from practically sea level. Ritigalakanda, the rock like a long pole, is steeped in history and legend. Once upon a time, the abode of the Yakkas, indigenous tribals of prehistoric Lanka, Ritigala enters recorded history in 307 BC, still not totally free of myth, when Mahavamsa records a great battle here between the rebel prince Pandukabhaya and his uncles. 1,000 years later, Ritigala becomes a hermitage for an order of bhikkhus, referred to as Pansakulika, who had taken a vow of extreme asceticism. It received royal patronage, and the numerous ruins which litter the entire hill range and its many once inhabited caves afford ample support to the story of the ancient importance of the site. For many years, Ritigala lay wrapped in a taboo that no mortal should step within its dark and mysterious precincts, because the spirits of the now vanished Yakka tribe protected their ancestral abode from intruders. James Mantle, a British surveyor, broke the taboo and entered Ritigala somewhere between 11th of May and 10th of July 1872. For the British civil servants of the 19th century, stationed in the harsh and unhealthy climate of the north-central province of Sri Lanka, Ritigala offered the tantalizing promise of a sanctuary. Within a few hours, one gets away from the hot and sultry plains to pure and invigorating air with heavy mists, even in the hottest time of the year. The tank civilization and the agrarian economy of ancient Sri Lanka reaches its most glorious phase in the 12th century at Polonnaruwa. Strategically located on a crossing of the river Mahaveli in the great divide between the north-central plains and the southern region, Polonnaruwa was the second and the last great capital of the Mahavamsa kings. However, Polonnaruwa's place in history was mainly due to Parakramabahu the Great, in whose reign of 42 years the city very nearly surpassed its predecessor in splendor and fame. As these reconstructed models show, Polonnaruwa is more secular than Anuradhapura, more urbane and sensuous, Moreover, as the ruins are not so ruined, they require less effort of imagination to enable one to recast scenes of the past. Polonnaruwa dominates in weather-worn brick as against the purer rock creations of Anuradhapura. There is a decadent stucco ornamentation which whispers of imitation. Three centuries before Polonnaruwa was built, the hand of the Pandyan and Chola invader was strong in Sri Lanka. This, no doubt, is one reason why the style and architecture of Polonnaruwa is predominantly Hindu in type. As the classical contours of gracefully sculptured granite give way to brick, one sees Tamil norms of architecture dominate in buildings which are devoted to Buddhist religious concepts. Parakrama himself was a Brahmin and chiefly of Tamil blood, as doubtless were his court and nobility. The royal architect of Polonnaruwa may have realized that he had to conciliate two sections of supporters and could not afford to alienate the Sinhalese and the Buddhist monks. As the Sinhala kingdom began withdrawing to the central hills in the great historical shift known as the drift to the southwest, the jungle tide crept over Pulatti Nagara, as Polonnaruwa was referred to in the ancient chronicles. By the beginning of the 19th century, it had become a malaria-infested marginal settlement known as Topari. One day, in the year 1828, a young first lieutenant of His Majesty's 2nd Ceylon Regiment, marching his detachment from Batticaloa in the east coast to the interior, was attracted by some stone pillars standing in the jungle off the road and decided to examine. It was he, Lieutenant M.H. Fagan, who stumbled upon the ruins of Polonnaruwa after 5 centuries of oblivion. What is reconstructed here is what Fagan may have imagined Polonnaruwa to have been in its days of glory. His carefully compiled notes, first published in the Ceylon Government Gazette of August 1st, 1820, and reprinted in 1885 in Volume 2 of the Orientalist, written with a gift for vividly painting a picture in words, are a pioneer account of the discovery of the disintegrating remains of Pulatti Nagara, consigned to oblivion under a forest of large trees, 5 centuries old and covered by a mantle of lush undergrowth.